fig tree down. It's not bearing any fruit.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach. Disgrazia.
They will not allow Donald Trump to be president. This is the twisted mind of the left. You're putting a Band-Aid over a problem that's not being addressed. It's thrown around too liberally, hate speech. Just because your feelings are hurt doesn't mean it's hate speech. So there are issues here that cross political lines.
It means that your libtard friends are not going to invite you over for Grey Goose and Foie Gras.
If you think that America is about you, you're just fool.
I got to show you something that has me aggravated. Well, I'll tell you what, Joe, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things to get aggravated about right now. Some things to get aggravated about. And quite frankly, Joe, surprised about. I mean, Joe, last time I checked, Canada, I assume, has a similar constitution to us. I mean, I assume, maybe wrongly, Joe. I don't know. I'm not Canadian. Maybe our Canadian friends can tell us. I would assume they have the right to free expression of their religion, the right to free speech, the right to go to the library that they pay taxes for and go protest and say, we don't want that guy dressed like a girl in the library. I assume they would have these rights. But maybe I'm wrong because according to you, Joe Resinello, you put out a couple clips this week. So Pastor Derek Reimer evidently is not protected when he goes down to the library that he pays taxes to support when he wants to go in there and he wants to talk to them about why they're allowing drag queens in there to tell stories to children. So if you're just joining us, you're at the Front Line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. We're going to go way in the breach tonight because we're going to talk about this pastor. We're going to talk about protecting pregnancy centers in Washington. You got Josh Hawley really putting the screws to Merrick Garland. You're going to love that one. And then CPAC. There were some light moments from CPAC, okay? So we're going to get into it all. Joe, give us a recap because my brain's about to explode. When I watch this video, and Jonathan's going to play it, okay? When I watch this video, I'm appalled, Joe. And I'm not being hyperbolic. I am like blown away that this could happen in a so-called free country, Joe. So what's going on?
Well, I'll tee it up and then we'll watch the clip. Basically, the pastor, he basically was protesting at the library. Like you said, I believe they threw him on the ground and basically asked him to leave. And then the next day they came to his house and they arrested him. Didn't hurt anybody. He was just protesting the fact that men were dressed up as women and they were basically reading to kids. Listen, this is just an example of what one twisted leader can do to a democratic nation. We've seen it. You saw an emergency situation. The pandemic happened. They basically took power away from people, and they're not going to give it back. Yeah. Power is never given. It's taken. They took it from you. Now you have to take it back. And you take it back primarily through voting. You have to vote him out. Too many people are, like I said, I don't know how you could support him. I really don't. Like, no matter what your political stripe is. Because if you see behavior like this going on, the next people they're coming after is you. But let's look at the clip, and then we could talk a little bit more.
Pastor at Calgary's Mission 7 Ministries, who feeds the homeless and ministers to the vulnerable in the downtown core, was arrested Thursday afternoon after he was assaulted while protesting at an all-ages drag queen story hour event in Calgary's Seton Library.
We are now calling the police.
We have now confirmed that Pastor Derek has been arrested and charged with several bylaw offenses, mischief, and causing a disturbance. The question lies if this was a direct result of Mayor Gondek's temper tantrum on Twitter.
Well, I'm not surprised when mayors, have temper tantrums. Joe, let me ask you this. Outside of, let's say, shadiness when it comes to voting, okay, don't we have to assume that the Canadian people voted for Justin Trudeau? I'm asking. I'm not making a statement, Joe. I'm really asking you a question. Should we be shocked when people vote themselves into tyranny? Because it seems that that's what's happening in America. And it seems like that's what's happening in Canada. They're voting themselves into tyranny in the name of being inclusive and being tolerant and being woke. In other words, and all they're doing is giving Justin Trudeau and his cronies in Ottawa all sorts of power the same way they're doing here. Tell me where I'm wrong. People, at what point do we point to other people, Joe, and say, you are the... Joe, real quick, when you watch any of those drag queen videos that they're showing, they're all over the internet, okay? Joe, there's a ton of adults in the room standing next to their little sons and daughters tolerating this BS.
It's not just tolerating, they support it, which is nuts. But this is what happens when a society forgets about God. But that's another story for another day. Obviously, you're never going to run under the banner of totalitarianism or even socialism for that matter. They're masking their agenda under the banner of progressivism and liberalism. It's nothing more than totalitarianism. And the people who are, quote unquote, progressive and liberal don't care that the other people are basically being put under their thumb. Ultimately, it's short-sighted thinking because the pendulum swings sometimes from left to right, and it could happen, and then they're coming after you. It's very foolish. Coupled with
do you think they think of those consequences though? Because it seems to me that
people
they act in the moment. The left acts in the moment, and their attitude is the consequences be damned. We'll deal with that if and when. And see, here's the thing: they go to the bank, Joe. Unfortunately and sadly, rightfully so, they go to the bank on the lack of reaction from those who would ordinarily oppose this. They say, well, these people got no guts. Now, we know of examples, going back a couple of years with tearing down statues and everything else. There are examples where people fought back, okay, and they stood their ground. The pastor's on his own. Joe, let me ask you this. Let's get Nork here for a little bit. You saw that clip that we just played, okay? You got him being thrown out. You got the woke broad over the top of going, now we're going to call the police. Look to the left of the screen, and what is there? A thug. You see the thug standing, throwing pastor to the ground, the guy in the blue hoodie, okay?
Yeah, I saw him.
No. That's a telling thing, Joe. He's not there supporting these drag queens. He's there supporting an agenda. That guy, you tell me, I know what I'm talking about. That guy's told, you go there and you keep that guy out and you do whatever you have to do to keep him out. That guy is a leftist thug. Now, here's my question. I would never advocate violence, okay? But why isn't there 200 Derek Reimers down there, including maybe some Catholic bishops, okay, that are walking into that particular library saying, hell no, you're not going to do this.
Well, that was the point of my clip. Basically, not just Catholics, but Protestants, people of goodwill. This is where you have to realize if they're coming after Bishop, Pastor Derek, they're coming after you. You're next. The bishops should be speaking out. Listen, he's not Catholic, but he is our brother in Christ. Speak out.
Right.
Say something. How about the priests? Where's your voice? Say something. Where's the rest of the mega churches, the Protestant churches? Nothing. Not a peep. The only two people that I've heard is this guy and Pastor Arthur that we had on the show. Frankly, Catholics, we're supposed to have it all, and we do. We have all the sacraments, the whole deal. Not a peep. Not a peep. They're coming after, and that was the gist of my clip. They're coming after you next. You do realize that.
But Joe, we know
how historically, and it's going to happen in Canada. And I got news for you. America's not too far from it.
Oh, Joe, they're basically in lockstep with each other. I mean, why? What makes us different? Okay. We have more states. They have provinces. We have 50 states. We have more red states. We have more Republican governors, but they don't do anything either. It's like you're talking about these Republican governors. Joe, there's a lot of drag queen story hours going on in red states. Like, how do we excuse that? How does a governor not step in and say, hold it. I'm a Republican governor. We have a Republican legislature. What did you say? Drag queen story hours? To get the librarian on the phone, or whoever runs the library, to say, by the way, no more money. No more money. Sorry, you kicked the drag queens out. They're not going into a place for kids. They're not doing that. What would have happened, Joe Rossinello? Let me tell you something. We have some examples of this going back to when the thugs were marching on the not marching, they were causing chaos in front of the statue of St. Louis, right? And they started throwing fists. They beat the crap out of a guy who was 65 years old. These young thugs. That guy Umar Lee, all right, who's with Black Lives Matter. Guy ain't even black. Okay, you're running Black Lives Matter, and these Catholics. In this case, it was Catholics defending the statue. They get the crap beat out of them. Right? What happened after that? You had 3 times the amount of Catholics show up in front of that same statue and pray the rosary. And you know what these racist Black Lives Matter thugs did? Nothing. They were completely disarmed. Their white guy narrative didn't work. Now, I'm mentioning that as a comparison. What would have happened if 200 pastors, including Catholic bishops, locked arms, walked into that library and said, excuse me, there's a lot of us here, so let us into the room. Okay. Excuse me. The presence of this drag queen in front of these children is tantamount to child abuse. We want him out of here now. We pay taxes in this province, okay, in this town, in this municipality, whatever it is, and we want him out. Him, by the way, okay? And we want these children protected, and we're not leaving. We're not leaving. The drag queen leaves first. You know what would happen, Joe? The drag queen would have left. They can't arrest 200 pastors and bishops, Joe. They're not going to arrest that many people at one time. There's a way of doing this without getting thuggish like they do. Okay? It's just showing up sometimes, Joe Rossinello.
Well, people have to show up. I mean, Martin Luther King showed up, and we have to show up. Period. End of story. We have to show up at the ballot box. But you talk about why people don't do anything, because people don't care, Joe. They're indifferent and they don't care. And that's Republicans and Democrats. That's why Republican leaders get away with it, because the Republicans don't care either. They're indifferent. The amount of people that are really appalled by this, it's too small a group to care about them. That's the Orthodox Jews, that's the Muslims, and that's basically the conservative Protestants like Pastor Derek, as well as the, conservative, say, daily communicant Catholics, whatever you want to call them, whatever bucket you want to put them in. But that's a small bucket, and that's why people are getting away with these things. That's why they're voted upon. And that's why the Republicans, in many cases, just give lip service. What did they really do for our pro-life causes?
Nothing.
What have they done with regard to basically conserve traditional values, family values, set up tax structures to help families who have children? Let's get down to brass tacks. They don't really do much. Right. And that's why, to be honest with you, it's like, all right, whatever. The only real reason why I vote Republican is because of the intrinsic evils. That's it.
Right.
They don't champion me. And
no way.
No, but this is my point. And because Joe, they're smarter than you think. They understand the people that put them in office. Believe me, these people aren't as dumb as you think. It has nothing to do with courage. It has nothing to do with what's right. It has everything to do with, I want this job. This is what keeps me here, and therefore I'm going to do it. And that is how these people roll. Very few politicians have basically convictions. And I got news for you. When you do, you don't go far. You're like Chris Smith in New Jersey. Great guy. He's going nowhere. Lieberman tried that. His own party threw him out. He tried it. Like I'm not saying I support.
No, I know what you're saying. He was a voice of dissent in their party.
It's not the way politics works. Politics works simply like this. A politician understands the people who put him there, and he manipulates them so he could get in. And once you get in, then it's power time. You use financial as well as power to coerce people to get your agenda through, and then you manipulate the people.
Right.
And that is the name of the game.
Well, that's
on both sides of the aisle.
Well, no, I agree with you, Joe, but it's more on the left. It's more on the left. Now, Entrenched Republicans, I'm not going to, I will agree with you 1,000%. Guys who have been there 10, 20, 30 years, okay, they're entrenched interest. Yeah, you're right. They just dole out the money. They're the one commentator I heard describe it was they're the chamber, they're the next guy in line from the Chamber of Commerce in your district that gets the Republican nomination, and it's his turn to go to Congress.
That's
Like
right.
it all goes in turns. That's why what surprises me, and what not really surprises me, but you have to think that everything you just said is correct. Because look at the last election. Look at some of the newsworthy races. Remember the attractive black girl in Baltimore? She was
Oh, yeah,
running
yeah, I
for
remember.
Congress. I forgot her
Should have
name.
won.
Right?
It started with a
She,
K.
yeah.
I can't think of
And Kimberly, I think it was Kimberly something. Anyway. You would
Klasick
have
or
thought
something like that.
you would have thought that based on the amount of attention she was getting, that she was really ruffling some feathers. Joe, she got destroyed.
Crushed.
Her own people won't vote for her. She's young. She's attractive. She's not one of these crusty old NAACP types, just entrenched Uncle Tom black liberals. She's young. She's vibrant. She's bringing some new ideas. She wants to help her people. They turned their back on her, stabbed her in the back. They voted for their own slave masters, is what they did. And you're right. Why? Because they control the money, and the money flows through, and everybody gets their money. And the guy who gets the money goes to his 5 blocks of Baltimore and says, everybody, all you guys, we're voting for this guy. And don't vote for her. Yeah, but she sounds, don't worry about how she sounds. Is she holding the money? I'm holding the money. You want it to keep flowing? And you're exactly right. They control the money. They control the levers of power, particularly in all the blue states and in the blue cities. And quite frankly, that's what makes a lot of people distrust 2020, 2022. We'll see what happens in 20. You got Rhonda McDaniel. She's a waste of time. She's a waste. You want to talk about the perfect example of why our own party, Joe, why we need a viable third party in this country in particular, okay? Is because of people like Rhonda McDaniel. She wants Republicans to sign a pledge against Donald Trump. You imagine that? No, anyway, when you're talking, when you're talking about these things, she's not going to do anything. If she was in Canada, the pastor would still be going to jail. Okay, the pastor would still be going to jail, and that's the bottom line because they're feckless, Joe. They're feckless. They have no leadership. They don't want it. They don't take their stones and put them on the table because they're too afraid of getting them cut off. And this pastor, nobody joined him, Joe. Let me tell you something, Joe. If I knew he was going there, my hand to God, if I knew he was going there and he was going to walk into that, and I lived in Canada, I would have gone with him.
Well,
I would have. I could say, Joe, I could look at myself real quick. I could look at myself in the face, in the mirror, and say, I would have joined Derek Reimer. I would have joined him walking in there. Okay, I've seen these people firsthand. I'm not afraid of them. See that thug that threw him to the ground? That would have never happened. If 200 guys showed up, okay, and said this isn't going to happen, they could have made a difference. The problem is this guy had no support, Joe.
Well, you're right, and like I said, I blame the Catholics too.
I do.
They should be outraged. They should be.
Yeah.
And because ultimately, Joe, I'm telling you, this is, they say there's a slippery slope. Dude, the door is wide open now. It's wide open. And, it's historic. This has happened in other countries not too long ago. It happened in Spain in the 20th century under Franco. It happened in Mexico. It's happening. The church was persecuted. People were killed. Thousands of them. This is very real. And it's happening. It's happening. We're going to talk a little bit later about Josh Hawley, about basically him bringing up the fact that the DOJ and the FBI are doing nothing to protect Catholics, particularly at abortion centers. You had Mark Hoke, who gets arrested by stormtroopers in front of his 7 kids. I mean, it's absurd.
Right.
And again, this is real. But why don't people do what you just said? Because, Joe, they don't take their faith seriously. God is a word. He's a word. It's nothing more than a word. If you took your faith seriously, you would be appalled by this.
Right.
Serious, and that's no joke.
What about as a
Catholic or
parent, Joe?
Protestant, you'd be
Even leaving,
appalled.
I mean, leaving aside religion for a second, okay? What about just as a parent? What kind of, I really want to know. Like, I don't know why everybody's so afraid of being they're all afraid of being called judgmental. You're so judgmental.
'Cause
Everybody's
they want to get
judgmental.
invited to the barbecue, Joe.
Well, then, you know what, Joe? Then F them.
No,
And
like
and here's the thing. Then the thing is, I don't care about little Johnny coming home saying he's a girl. Then you deal with that. You bear that
people
cross.
don't want. It's just what it's like at the Little League, game. People don't want to be the oddball. People are afraid. It's almost like you're in grammar school and it's adults. They keep their mouths shut, and that's not just on that. It's on a million different things. A million different things. How about just cohabitating your son or your daughter? Dude, that points to divorce. Sociological statistics show that you get divorced. But again, that's just the name of the game. People don't open their mouth.
Well,
And they're indifferent because they don't take their faith seriously. They just don't. If you did, Joe, listen, in all honesty, on all these issues, if you are a Catholic and you have an understanding that Jesus is in the Eucharist and you're a practicing Catholic, you're not voting for someone who's killing children. Joe, you're not.
right.
If you're a Catholic, you're not going to support a guy dressed up as a girl, basically reading a story to little kids. You're not. It's not cute.
Joe, did you see some of the recent videos? Like, they try to dress it up where it's this wonderful looking person who's reading. He is dressed up as a woman and wonderfully reading the story and blah blah blah. Joe, the last couple I've seen are just outright kink shows.
By the way, John, Janet just pinged me. The link isn't working. If we maybe resend it.
All right, so let's try it. We're having a little difficulty. That's okay. We're going to keep the conversation going at the front line with Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. But Joe, my larger point is these shows were out and out kink shows is what they were. All right. I mean, it was disgusting. You got a guy dressed in a thong with no shirt on and a blonde wig, and the parents are just going like this, Joe. It's wonderful. And then one of them is picking up a little 4-year-old girl, 4-year-old girl, looked like, and I'm saying to myself, people don't like when people like us and some evangelical Christians bring up Sodom and Gomorrah. How could you not, when you see that in America, how could you not bring up Sodom and Gomorrah? How could you not bring up depravity?
Dude, they have the pin. Joe, they're part of it. This is the thing. Like, it's not them looking in. They believe, a lot of these people, like you said, they're not being coerced. They go there. They think it's great.
Yeah.
Like, this is, Joe, our society has lost its anchor. Things that are complete common sense. That is common sense. Straight away, common sense. It's not common anymore.
No.
And this is in America and in Canada. And I'll be truthful with you. That's why my wife and I, we keep our circle very small, dude. I keep it very, very tight. I'm not like hiding from the world. I'm in the world. I live, in a major metropolitan area. My kids go to school. With that said, though, I keep my circle very tight.
I don't blame you.
And because I'll be truthful with you, the world is going to eat these people alive. I saw just today, I took my kids to the park. There's 2 lesbians at the park. One of the women had children. She must have been in a relationship with a man. She had 2 of her kids. They were young, like 25 years old. The girl has tattoos all over her face.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I could have cried looking at her. I said to my wife when I got home, that girl, I will bet you, doesn't live to 40. She looked like a wreck. 25 years old, tattoos, like she was in prison.
Joe, and here's the problem with the culture is the culture that nurtures that, okay, that tells that poor lost girl, okay, that all of that is okay. They say we cause her to die.
I know it. That's
old.
The sickest part. And I'm just an observer to that.
Right.
Only reason why I bring that up, not to point fingers. That will not work. If you think, anyone who hears my voice, if you think that you're going to build a sound and healthy society with that, you are delusional.
No.
It's not going to work. And none of it is going to work, Joe. 40 years from now, if this continues, we are going to be looking something out of like a Mad Max video.
No,
And we're
Joe.
close to it now.
Joe, let's be clear. Let's be very clear, okay? At the end of the Roman Empire, okay, there wasn't like, all of a sudden there was, desolation all over the place. You just had a society that collapsed, a government that collapsed. The barbarians from Northern Europe came in. They took control. They reestablished order. And guess what? Rome just turned into a different form. Now, obviously, the Catholic Church had a lot to do with that in reforming Europe, okay? And creating what we call Western civilization. Joe, it won't be like Mad Max. It's just going to look something different. But real quick, we had a couple of technical difficulties. We want to bring in Janet Marana because she is somebody who's on the front line. Okay, she is somebody who's been standing up in the face of this, in this culture war, primarily when it comes to fighting against abortion. So we want to bring her on right now. John, if you could bring Janet in. There she is. Hi, Janet. How are you?
Sorry about the technical difficulties.
That's okay. So
Right.
Good evening.
Thanks
So
for
I
coming on,
guess-
Janet. As always, it's such a pleasure to have you on to talk about. I mean, like I said, I'm not blowing smoke. It's the truth. You've been doing this for a very, very long time. Let me hand it over to Joe real quick. We have you for a limited amount of time, but we again, our audience is going to be enlightened as always by what you have to say. Joe Resinello.
Just to let you know, I just landed tonight back home after attending the CPAC, Conservative Political Action Committee conference in DC. I was there. I heard President Trump he gave almost like a 2-hour speech. But before we get to that, I want to go back to early January, okay? Because I was there in the gallery of the House when they did two things. First, they did the resolution to protect the pregnancy centers. Since Roe v. Wade overturned, as you know, like 300 at least attacks on pregnancy centers. So the House, the Republicans, I should say, passed a resolution saying we should protect the pregnancy centers. And it was nauseating to see how the Democrats were like, oh, why should we protect them? Like the arguments. When you're up in the gallery, you have to be silent. You can't say anything. So I'm there going, Oh, they were bringing up every problem from the 80s on with abortionists who were prosecuted, went to jail. Some of them got the death penalty with activities outside abortion clinics. So they were like spewing that mantra. But what about the 300 attacks that the DOJ was like silent on, right?
Right.
The Republicans thundered away. And of course, they passed a resolution saying that if there's any more attacks on the pregnancy centers, there's this resolution that will say, we will protect pregnancy centers, giving resources to women. But on the same day, they also brought to the floor the Born Alive Protection Act. Now, a lot of people are very confused right now because they said, oh, wait a minute. Didn't we do this under President Bush, right? Back in the day with partial birth abortion? No, didn't we do this? But the problem was, we did a wonderful thing. We passed that bill, but it had no teeth. It had no enforcement. So now the Born Alive bill says, if a baby is born, can you guys wrap your heads around this? If a baby is born alive in an abortion procedure, currently what happens? The abortionists let the baby die. But under the Born Alive bill, they must take that baby and transport it to the local hospital for care. Right?
Right.
You're going to let a baby flounder. I mean, come on. This is crazy.
Well, this is, but
That
this, Janet
wouldn't
Miranda, this is
give
how far that they've
basic
gone.
medical care for that baby, right?
How is it that they could, how is it that Republicans, again, like we talk about it all the time, our enemy, we know what our enemy is going to do. The Republicans don't do a damn thing. They're going to talk about some shooting that happened 25 years ago, or they're going to talk about, let's say, things that happened 30 years ago. There's no violence in front of abortion clinics. Everybody knows that. What, Mark Hoke?
Right.
What, Mark Houck pushed a guy who was about to attack his kid. He gets cleared by a very liberal. He gets cleared by the liberal DA in Philadelphia. He refuses to press charges, and then Merrick Garland goes after him. We're going to get into that later on. But the thing is, the Republicans just let them skate, Janet.
I understand that. So here I am. I'm in the gallery. It was my first time ever being in the gallery of the U.S. House of Representatives. And when you're in a gallery, you can't say anything. You have to be quiet. Can you imagine Janet up there? I was like, so one of the congressmen who was a friend of mine, he came up to visit with me. And I kind of said to him, could you please tell them to say A, B, C, D, E, F, G? He went back down and told Jim Jordan, actually, who is the congressman who was fighting all this. And he gave him my talking points. I was like, yes, they're going to say something. But, the sad thing, see, what people don't realize is when they do this debate, there, everything goes into the congressional record. So whatever you say is recorded and it goes to the congressional record. And I try to tell our team, for God's sake, can you just please put the truth there? Put the truth of these Democrats. They're beyond anything you can imagine.
I know.
There's not one abortion they don't like, and they want to kill babies to birth. If you survey the American people, most people will say, oh my gosh, Dan, that's going too far. Yeah, it is going too far.
Right.
It's like enough already, So the good news is the House passed a resolution, simple logic. If a baby is born alive during an abortion procedure, now, instead of letting what was happening, they would let the baby just die, floundering for a breath of air. Now they're forced to transport that child to the nearest emergency room for care.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this bill says. It was passed. Every Republican voted in favor of it. Every Democrat voted against it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
right.
Okay. A baby's born alive. It's like if we were talking about puppies or whales or sea turtles, everyone would be like, oh, yeah, protect the environment, protect the sea turtles, protect this. Oh, if a baby's born alive, we're going to let that baby just flounder, grasp for air, and die. Well, these Democrats are so out of control. It's crazy.
Well, Janet, that's what I'm sorry, Janet, only because of the technical difficulties we're coming up. We gotta keep it moving. But I thank you for the update. Joe and I thank you for the update. We'll have you on soon. We apologize, Janet, because
no, it's fine.
Technology's great until it ain't. But Janet, God bless you, and thank you for coming on. We'll talk soon.
God bless.
Keep the fight up. Yeah, so no, and that's the thing, and then we're going to get into it too. All right. Now she's got a lot of nerve, Joe. She gets out there into the breach. She makes her voice known. She's been doing it with Father Pavone. Can we call him Father Pavone? With Frank Pavone for decades. And yeah, the Democrats just want to bring up something that happened like 20 or 30 years ago. In the meantime, that's the way they try to, like, let's say, counterbalance their own violence, which is happening right here and now. Now, somebody else. Now, we say Republicans. I know I say to everybody out there who's listening to us at the front line with Joe and Joe that Republicans don't do anything for us, okay? And generally speaking, they don't. But there are a couple of Republicans that do give us a good show. Now, I don't think they're trying to give us a show. I think they're speaking from the heart. The problem is there's not enough of them. However, Josh Hawley's one of those guys that I'm firmly convinced is on our side. We want to show you a little something about stones, about putting your stones on the table and putting the screws to some of these oligarchic, useful idiots like Merrick Garland. John, roll the tape.
Chairman, Attorney General Garland, let me just ask you, does your department have a problem with anti-Catholic bias?
Our department protects all religions and all ideologies. It does not have any bias against any religion of any kind.
Well, you could have surprised me, because given the resources that you are expending and the apparently intelligence assets that you are deploying against Catholics, it appears, and other people of faith, while simultaneously turning a blind eye while people are executed gang style in the streets of our cities, including in my home state, your answer frankly surprises me. Let's talk about the Mark Houck case, for example. You've been asked about this already today, and frankly, your answers really astound me. This is a case where a Catholic pro-life demonstrator, father, was accused of disorderly conduct in front of an abortion center. The local prosecutor, the Philadelphia district attorney, who is a Democrat, a liberal, very progressive, declined to prosecute. There was a private suit that got dismissed. And then after all of that, your Justice Department sent between 20 and 30 armed agents in the early morning hours to the Houck's private residence to arrest this guy after he had offered to turn himself in voluntarily. Here's the photo. Once again, you can see the long guns, you can see the ballistic shields, you can see that they're wearing bulletproof vests.
Calling it the way it is, Joe. Calling it the way it is. Merrick Garland's going to sit there and he's going to try to obfuscate. He's going to try to just keep, talking out of both sides of his mouth and never address. And let me tell you something. It wasn't just Josh Hawley. It was Mike Lee. It was Ted Cruz. Okay. And they let him have it, Joe, in public. Right there in the Senate, and read it into the record. He said, "Do you have an anti-Catholic bias at the Justice Department?" And Merrick Garland turned into Ralph Cramden. And I loved it, Joe. It was great theater. They gave it to him good, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I listened to a number of them. I listened to our friend, what's his face, John Kennedy. I listened to Ted Cruz. I listened to Josh Hawley, and I listened to a bit of Cotton as well as Marsha Blackburn. But I thought the two that I thought were very effective was Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley. I thought John Kennedy did a great job as well. Listen, Merrick Garland is nothing more than a puppet. He'll do anything the machine tells him to do. Once again, similar to what we saw in Canada, they are running rough shot over Christians. They are, period. And when I mean Christians, people who take their faith seriously. You see, their idea is this. You could believe in God. This was Obama's idea. Keep it in your house. Keep it in your house. Period. End of story. You're not bringing it out into the street like Mark Hoke. You're not going to be in the public square with your faith. Don't think that you could have those conversations, bring them to work. None of it. We're not having it. And frankly, some of the other things that came out in those conversations, particularly the Ted Cruz one, they're not prosecuting people that basically destroy pregnancy centers as well as destroy churches. They're not even looking into it. And if that's not overwhelming, a pattern has been basically, you're not paying attention or you simply don't care. It's one of the two. You're indifferent. I don't care. And that is troubling. That just shows you, to be honest with you, Joe, our society is ill. It's dysfunctional and it's ill.
Joe, let me ask you a question. I'm not going to sit here at the front line with Joe and say that I disagree with you on that, okay? Because I don't know. But I have an interesting question for you that I'd like you to answer, okay? Do you think, or I'd like for you to comment on, Do you think because of the leftist control of the media in America that, quite frankly, people just don't get a lot of this information? That it's not that they don't care, but look, outside of Twitter, I'm going to say it again.
Fair point,
Thank
Joe.
God for Elon Musk. I mean that
No,
sincerely.
that's a fair point.
We have a free speech platform in Twitter that did not exist before. I don't fear putting up Frontline with Joe and Joe on Twitter for fear it's going to get taken down. All right. And what you work so hard to build that a YouTube could just take down by saying, well, you got a strike. And therefore, I'm not going to promote your videos. Okay. And like they do. But my point is that you see with their vitriol and their shrill voices, Joe, okay, that the reason why they hate Elon Musk, the reason why they hate Twitter, the reason why they want to control social media, why they do control the legacy media. There's a lot of people out there, Joe, that are just not getting the message.
Oh, you're right about that. That's fair. That's very fair. Like a lot of this stuff, it's a lot of the things that like we talk about, on our station, people aren't getting it. Like meaning through the mainstream media, they don't see that. That's why they subscribe to us, to be honest with you, and people like us.
Right.
And that's sad, but that's a given, sadly. But even so, how many people, in all honesty, what's it called, who are Catholic, who are aware of some of these things? Joe, there are some things that are out there. For instance, the Democrats aren't just for abortion, they're for infanticide.
Yeah.
It's beyond abortion now.
Right.
It's infanticide. And that's a disqualifier. Joe, how many percent of the American Catholics vote Democrat? Like, and this is what I'm saying, and we've said this a million times. This is not the party of your grandfather. They're cultural communists. This is the party of cultural communists. And I'm going to give you a perfect example of that.
Please.
Howard Schultz is a Democrat. He couldn't run. He got sick. He was going to run as an independent in the last election, and he wound up getting cancer and he dropped out. But I listened to a couple of his pitches. For those who don't know who Howard Schultz is, he used to be the CEO of Starbucks. He is a Democrat, straight up and down, but his party would not embrace him. He had to run as an independent. You see, that's a Democrat. Don't support him because he's for abortion, the whole 9 yards, but he's sane. He's not a cultural communist. But the problem is there's too many Catholics who still think that this is the Democratic Party of their grandfather, and it's not.
Can I just pivot a little bit? Okay.
Sure.
I'd like to ask you this, Joe Rossinello at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. If you're just joining us, please, we don't ask you for money, even though some of you do give, and we very much appreciate that. We don't ask you for money. We ask you for about 30 seconds to like, subscribe, to share it on Twitter, on your Twitter page, hashtag it. Help us out in that way. Joe and I, by the grace of God, all right, and Jonathan, our producer, the show's growing, the reach is growing. We're adding more and more content. So help us out, please, wherever you can. Joe, the Democrat Party is not the party of your Irish or Italian or your Polish blue-collar grandfather, okay? But let me ask you this. The Republican Party is no longer, or at least if Donald Trump and many others, not just Donald Trump, many others, okay, like Josh Hawley, okay, and people like him, J.D. Vance, I think qualifies, people like him, okay, they want a different form of the Republic, a different iteration of the Republican
I agree
Party,
with you.
okay? And if you're going to be Rhonda McDaniel and you're going to have Republicans sign a pledge that they're not going to support Donald Trump, I don't know what to tell you, Rhonda, because then maybe we do need a third party, because I'm not voting for him.
Did she really
Over
say
my
that? I
dead
didn't
body,
hear
Joe,
that.
I'm going to say this on the record. Over my dead body, if Mike
Did
Pence
she really do
got-
that?
Well, it was something along those lines, something having to do with signing a pledge having to do with Trump. Let me say that I'm a little unclear about it, but it seemed like a pledge that you can't support Donald Trump
Because
or
he
something
supported
along those
her.
lines.
That's the only reason why I say that. That would be shocking. But I don't know. Who the hell
Okay,
knows?
let's leave that aside for a second, Joe. She's still establishment. She's afraid. She's a fearful Republican. She wrings her hands and wonders why we can't win elections, because you have no balls. That's why we can't win elections. Don't you get it? The Democrats have stones beyond belief. Joe, they'll do anything right there in the moment. Right there in the moment, okay? To get whatever they can through. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I get it. I get it, dude. It's bad. Joe, it's bad. I'll be honest with you. That's why I pray the rosary on first Saturdays, Joe, because I'll be honest with you. I think that's our only hope.
Well, Joe, I'm obviously that's first and foremost is the fact that we're morally speaking off the rails in this country, but just on a purely political level, things that anybody could do, Joe, anybody could do. Okay, to let's say, for argument's sake, get out there, go and protest at the school board, go to the drag queen story hour, okay, with 200 men. And drag the drag queen out of there. Okay, I'm not advocating violence, but show him the door and say, you're not welcome here in front of our children. Okay, this is what I'm talking about having stones. Republicans fear that so much. That's why Republicans fear the pro-life movement, the authentic pro-life movement, because they actually fear they're going to get something done. See, Republicans, Joe, they just want to use abortion as a wedge issue.
No, I know it. It's the same thing with the border. They do the same thing. They don't do anything there either. It's Joe. It's the same friggin' crap. I mean, because again, the people who give them money aren't having it. We're no longer a country of the people. We're not. You're deluding yourself if you think that. Anyone whoever's listening, and in the same in Canada, the people have no say. They have no say. And now they basically also made laws that affect voting, whereby, frankly, you don't have to show ID, which basically allows non-citizens to vote in America. And that's done intentionally.
Well, then why is Rhonda McDaniel talking about issues? Then why are they talking about individual issues that don't mean a damn thing unless they address what you just said first and foremost?
Because it circles back to its manipulation of the people. Politicians manipulate people, and then they play power politics to ram an agenda based upon those who give them money. That is the name of the game. Like, it's a fog. Most people don't see through that, and they're played. And sadly, the term useful idiots still applies. Many people are just that. They're used by the machine to get an agenda out. Joe Biden is a puppet. Merrick Garland is a puppet of a machine. It's a cultural communist machine that is running the Democratic Party.
But
and
not enough
all
people.
the people underneath it are just being used. And by the way, most of them, unless you're rich, where you're above the fray, are going to get flushed right down the toilet.
Hey, listen, Joe. Well, you know what? And I said it a million times, and I'll probably say it a million times more. When those people who went along with this, who didn't step up even a little bit, okay, they didn't step up a little bit. Go on and cry in your coffee. Don't come bitching to me, because I'm not going to listen to you. When you say, well, what happened? Your fault. That's what happened. Did you do anything? Or did you just stand there and point fingers at pro-life people and call them extremists like everybody else? But then little Johnny came home and you got upset because little Johnny said, Daddy, I want to be little Janie. Or Daddy, I'm gay. And then the father turns around and says, well, how did this happen? Because you got a remote control in your hand every...
That's
What's
another
that?
thing. There's people who don't even have a problem with that. Because again, there's no idea of sin. There's no idea of hell. Joe, people don't think like that. There's no accountability. I'm going to heaven. I'm a good guy. There's no concept of mortal sin. There's no concept of I can't receive if I'm not in a state of grace. You see, those things keep you in line. We don't have that anymore. The barbarians have burst through the gate. And that's why people, and then obviously sin blinds you. And people are blinded. We accept things. Dude, we accept divorce and remarriage like it's nothing in America, and have for decades. You do realize that that is a mortal sin. You do realize that. But America do whatever the hell you want, and I'm going to heaven anyway. Guess what? Doesn't work that way.
Well,
Doesn't work that way.
Well, like I said, Joe, that when people could complain all they want. And the people who take that attitude could complain all they want, but then when they see the walls crumbling around them, they're going to wonder why. Let's play a clip from CPAC. CPAC was pretty interesting, and I do want to specifically focus on Mike Knowles, but let's play that clip.
Than for the good of society, and especially for the good of the poor people who have fallen prey to this confusion. Transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely.
If we have any reporters around, can I shoot them? And of course, I was a good officer. I always listen to my NCOs. But no,
you're not advocating that anybody would.
No. I would never advocate hunting the media for sport.
There's already an article.
Because I could not in good conscience remain in a party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers led by the queen of warmongers herself, Hillary Clinton.
Joe and Kamala even say that America's racist. Wokeness is a virus more dangerous than any pandemic, hands down.
We had a Republican Party that was ruled by freaks, neocons, globalists, open border zealots, and fools.
Now, a couple of takeaways there in the final minutes that we have left at the front line with Joe and Joe. First of all, Michael Knowles. I hope he files suit against Rolling Stone magazine, because we just played for our audience, okay, what he said at CPAC. He said transgenderism needs to be eradicated from our society. Rolling Stone ran an article with the headline, Michael Knowles calls for the eradication of transgender people. And I hope he sues the balls off them, and I hope he wins, okay? That's number one.
Well, they don't have balls anymore, Joe. They're transgender people. They don't have balls anymore. They're transgender people.
Well,
Joe.
Mike Knowles does. And as far as it goes, let's break it down a little bit, okay? Let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard. She wants to talk about warmongering. She can't be in a party. She can't be in. Now, this is the problem, Joe. This is one of the problems, okay, that we point out at the front line with Joe and Joe. Tulsi Gabbard says, I can't belong to a party that's run by a warmonger like Hillary Clinton. Tulsi, what about Lindsey Graham? What about Mitch McConnell? What about all those Republican members of the House of Representatives that are wearing Ukraine flags on their lapels? What about the senators that are doing the same thing? Tulsi, I hate to break it to you, the globalists that are in the on the right and the left want us to go to war. Zelensky himself turned around and said, United States parents, American parents, are going to have to start losing their sons and daughters, because our sons and daughters are going to have to go and fight. All right? I like to break it to Tulsi. Tulsi, the Republicans are just as guilty. Okay? It's only the conservatives in the party who are saying, no war. No war that does not involve us. It's Europe's problem.
Well, getting back to Mike Knowles, love the tie, by the way. I'm a big fan of Mike Knowles. I think he's one of the best out there. And what he's saying, to be honest with you, is right. In the mainstream, transgenderism should not be. What do I mean by that? Should we love people? Absolutely. Should we look to help people? Absolutely. But keep this in mind, everybody out there. Not too long ago, science, as in medicine, as in doctors, publicly stated people who did this to their body had mental issues. This is not too long ago. You could find that. This is not my opinion either. Society all of a sudden changed its mind and strong-arm science, and they can't say anything about it. And here's another thing. When he's talking about eradicating transgenderism in the public square, i.e., he has kids, and so do I. And I want nothing to do with that in front of my children. And I don't think that that is a statement that's off the hook. Right. Because, again, he's not talking about the people, and neither am I. But to be honest with you, if you think that it's normal that a man is going to lop off a piece of his body, thinking that somehow that's going to change the reality that he is no longer a man, If you think that's normal and you're going to affirm that individual in that horrendous decision to mutilate himself, I got news for you. You should do some serious soul searching, because if you really loved that person, you would do everything in your power to discourage them from doing that, because it's a mistake that can never be satisfactory to them. They'll never be happy. And that's why they don't live long. Transgender people have a life expectancy that's not even 40.
Right.
And it comes right down to that. The idea of love is not applied correctly. And I'm the monster for saying that.
Right.
Mike Knowles is the monster for saying that. No, absolutely not.
Let me tell you something. There's a lot of
care for you more than the media does.
Let me tell you, there's a lot of people in the Republican Party that cringed when Michael Knowles said that. They
Oh,
don't
I'm
want to
sure
hear
they
that.
did.
And let's
I'm
be
sure they
and
did.
let me make my final comment on this tonight. Joe Rossinello at the front line with Joe and Joe. We went way into the breach tonight. Let me make my final comment on this. Here's one thing that I'm tired of, Joe. I don't need Tulsi Gabbard in this party. I like her. She's okay. All right. She's also a lesbian. She's pro-abortion. Okay. Why do I need her in the party? Why does Sean Hannity make her into a hero? When did she become a hero? Because she went against her party? That doesn't make you a hero of mine. Are you going to change your position on abortion? That'll be a start. Okay. What about Alan Dershowitz? He was a hero because he defended Trump in the impeachment. Alan Dershowitz is my hero. We have pornography legalized in this country because of Alan Dershowitz. Okay. I'm tired of Republicans adopting heroes from the other party because they simply open their mouth or go against their party once. Alan Dershowitz is going to vote for Joe Biden or whoever the Democrat nominee is. Alan Dershowitz is not our friend. Tulsi Gabbard is, again, okay. All right. Okay, and you could meet her at one of these conferences and say, "Hey, Tulsi, how are you?" Okay, I don't necessarily want her. I don't want her to have any influence in our party, none whatsoever. Very little. Put it like this, very little, because she's anti-globalist. That I'll go along with her on. But again, she's not a hero, and I'm tired of adopting heroes from the other side, because guess what? On fundamental issues that we discuss here at the front line with Joe and Joe, primarily abortion, transgenderism, gay marriage, and a lot of the social issues, the moral issues, they don't agree with us. And the problem is you have Republicans. Joe, let me tell you something. There's one thing I'll give you the last minute. This is still Donald Trump's party. The party is a MAGA party, meaning that the idea is going to outlast Donald Trump. But at the moment, because he's still around, this is his party. Joe, I'm going to tell you right now, if Donald Trump was president, we wouldn't be in the Ukraine. And if Ron DeSantis was president, we would be in the Ukraine. That's the bottom line, okay, in a lot of this. I'll throw it over to you, Joe, for final comments.
When you talk about heroes, Clarence Thomas is my hero. He's a hero. I invite people to look at the documentary. Hero. He's an American treasure. Joe, I'll be honest with you. Politics isn't going to solve this because the country's demented. I'm going to just end it with that. I have no hope. Zero. Because the people, if you presented a healthy agenda to the American people right now, both sides of the aisle are not supporting it. You are a freak if you support a God-based family-first agenda. You're a freak. And that's why no politician will do it, because they like their job. So that's why I pray the rosary. And that is why there is a spiritual answer. The politics are not going to get you there. Until the people get healthy, the politics will never be healthy. Never.
We have
Zero.
to leave it there, Joe Rossinello. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Rossinello. Please, wherever you see us on social media, primarily the Frontline TV, the Frontline TV. Subscribe to that. Share it with your friends. And Twitter, @WithJoeandJoe, @WithJoeandJoe. Follow us there. We really appreciate it. Thank you all again for joining us. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.